Hello everybody and welcome to this special Met Office podcast. I'm Alex Deakin.
And I'm Aidan McGibbon.
We thought we'd just have a bit of a chat. It's been a busy week. It's still very busy. It's still very hot, but things will be changing. And there's been a lot going on this week with broken records. We thought we'd kind of discuss what's happened, why it's happened, and when are things likely to cool down.
Exactly. We are recording this at, about 11 o'clock on Thursday. And just so you're aware, temperature outside has just been recorded at 30 Celsius nearby Exeter Airport, and Rich, who's recording this, had to turn all the fans off in the studio because they were making too much noise. So you're going to start to see us get increasingly hot through the next
worth staying tuned just to see how hot and sweaty we get.
If you're watching it, of course, you might just be listening to it.
But yeah, we have broken records as well. Hot off the press this morning, 23.5 provisionally, the warmest night for June in the UK and for Wales. That was in Cardiff, but also the England record has been set, a New England record, 23.0 at Plymouth Mountbatten. So we have broken nighttime records. We broke the daytime temperature record yesterday, 36.1 in Hampshire. Probably going to get beaten today.
Yeah, temperatures are already starting off from a higher point, and with widespread sunny skies, many parts of the UK, those temperatures are rising quickly right now. So, yeah, by the time you're listening to this, that record may already have been broken second day in a row, and then potentially again on Friday in different locations. Though we're going to talk about how the heat is shifting, the hottest areas are moving.
Yeah, I think that's really quite important, how the heat is gradually shifting from different parts of the country. But the numbers almost aren't that important, are they? It's more about the humidity. That's one of the key factors we're trying to get across throughout this week. The humidity is really the main issue. Humidity much higher than it was when we broke the record back in 2022. The longevity of it, the fact that the nights are so warm, so uncomfortable for sleeping as well. We'll also talk about maybe a few top tips on how to stay cool also. So yeah, plenty to discuss.
And how it compares with when we recorded 40.3 Celsius in 2022. And an important comparison to make is how the setup for this heat wave differs from 2022 and how that's had an impact on how it feels versus 2022, even if the actual top temperatures aren't as high. And the setup for this heat wave, well, it's high pressure. It's similar to when we had that heat wave in May, sinking air under high pressure across northwest Europe, really compressing, heating up as it sinks. So it's not air that's sourced from North Africa or Spain. That would be relatively dry air if that was the case. This is air that actually, when you trace it back, came from the Atlantic and actually towards the southwest of the UK across warmer seas. And then it got caught up in this really expanding and intensifying area of high pressure over northern France, and it sunk and it compressed, and that's why it ended up being so hot. But also because it was originally over the subtropical Atlantic, it's got that humidity element. Similar setup in 2022, but one key difference with 22 is that actually when we were tracing the air back, it came from further north over the Atlantic. It came from near Iceland.
Yeah, well, further north than that, it was like Greenland, some of the traces, and they went over Iceland, so that's where our air was coming from. Yeah, so really quite remarkable. Often when we talk about hot spells, people assume our air is coming from Africa, but if you track those parcels of air, like we can do, myself and Alex Burkle have made some content around that earlier this week, so you can check that out on our YouTube channel. In the deep dive, I was talking about that. Well, we also talked about it on Monday, just tracing those parcels back. It's really quite interesting. It's not necessarily the heat at the source, it's that compression, and of course the fact that the sun's so strong at this time of year, so you do get that day-on-day heating.
Most heat waves in the UK are caused by sinking air compressing under high pressure, and the air, when you trace it back, might have come from Scandinavia, it might have come from Iceland. The source region doesn't matter as much as what's happening to the air under high pressure as it sinks and compresses. Then, of course, that clears the skies. You've got really strong sunshine at this time of year, as strong as it gets, of course, just past the solstice. And so day by day, the temperatures rise, soils dry out, and that allows more of the energy from the sun to heat up the air, the ground, and then that heats the air up. and you get this day-by-day temperature rise, don't you?
Yeah, and that was what happened in 76. A lot of chat this week about 76 as well, because kind of the anniversary is 50 years on. There was a big event in London at the start of the week as well. And that's one of the things about 76, or why 76 was so remarkable, was the heat, the dry spell preceding it. It was really dry from the summer of 75 through the winter and into the spring, which meant the ground was very dry, which meant you didn't lose as much energy heating things up because you haven't got that moisture, which is why 76 was so hot. But we've moved on now. Our climate is warmer, so we don't have to have that long hot spell to get those kind of temperatures. And now 76, it's the sixth warmest summer on record, and we beat that record for their June. That was when the record was from. We'd also recorded it in the 50s as well, but we're now ahead of that record.
Yeah, and when you look at 76, you had 3 months of sunshine every day, sunny skies, allowing those temperatures to gradually, albeit, incrementally creep up into the 30s and then eventually peaking at 35.6. Now what do we have? We have a first half of June where we had a lot of rain, a frequent westerly winds, low pressure. Then suddenly a few days of sunshine and boom, that temperature record is broken. So you don't need a summer like 76, the sunniest summer on record, it still stands as the sunniest on record, to beat these temperature records anymore. It seems like you just need high pressure for a few days and there you go, those temperatures back up into the mid to high 30s.
So in terms of temperatures, so we've already broken the June record, probably going to beat it today, almost certainly, had those nighttime temperatures, but it's not necessarily just about the temperatures. The humidity is key. As we talked about why it's humid, from where the air is coming from, down more subtropical, so we've got more moisture in it to start with. That's obviously really important. Humidity is so important for health impacts, because the only way that the body can cool itself down is by sweating. That's the natural process by which we cool down, and if the atmosphere around us is more moist, then it's harder for the body to sweat. That process doesn't happen as efficiently, and so the body naturally stays hotter, both by day and by night. And we're seeing remarkable humidity. Dew point is key for that, isn't it, for what we've been measuring?
Yeah, and there are lots of ways to represent humidity when we talk about humidity in our forecasts or in our warnings, when we're considering where to issue warnings and so on. Dew point is one of them. So dew point is the temperature at which, if the air temperature cooled to the dew point, then the air would become saturated. So the dew point is
that's where that's where the name comes from.
If you're in fog, then the dew point and air temperature is the same. So that can happen when it's -5 on a winter's morning, freezing fog. Dew point's the same as air temperature, and it's 100% relative humidity. So there's a difference between relative humidity and absolute humidity. Relative humidity is just basically that difference between air temperature and the dew point, and you could have 100% humidity but it's -5 outside. It's foggy, or you're up higher in the sky and you're in a cloud, still 100% humidity. Absolute humidity is more about the absolute amount of moisture in the atmosphere, and the higher the dew point, the greater that figure. So when the 2022 heat wave happened and we had 40 Celsius recorded, mostly dew points were in the single figures. Relatively dry
it was about
air.
9, wasn't it, in that Lincolnshire area in particular, where we had the highest temperature.
This week, dew point temperatures have been closer to 19, 20, 21 degrees. Really a significant difference, and that's just an indication of how much more moisture there is in the air and how that will affect our bodies, which is more important ultimately than the air temperature. So we've been talking about dew points. Another way to talk about it is wet bulb temperature.
Yeah, people have been asking questions about that, and we measure that in every kind of Stevenson screen around the UK where we've got a thermometer. There's also a wet bulb thermometer, which measures the wet bulb, which is literally a thermometer that has a little bit of muslin around it that's dipped in water. But how is that different to dew point?
Well, it's normally in between air temperature and dew point, unless they're all the same and you're in fog. But basically, wet bulb temperature is in some ways more important for how we feel, because it simulates what's going on when we're sweating, because that muslin that's wet, it's evaporating water, right, around that thermometer. So you've got a normal thermometer, which is measuring the air temperature, doesn't know about the humidity. Then you've got the wet bulb thermometer, and as that water around the muslin evaporates, If the air itself has a lot of moisture in it, then that process is quite slow because already plenty of moisture in the air. So as it's evaporating, something called latent heat cooling is taking place. So the atmosphere needs to take energy to do that evaporation from the thermometer, and the faster the evaporation takes place, the more cooling there is, so the lower the thermometer temperature will register, and the greater that difference between the other thermometer and the wet bulb thermometer. If the air is full of moisture, you're not going to get as much evaporation, you're not going to get as much evaporative cooling.
Yeah.
And so that's similar to how we feel. We're sweating outside, when it's hot. If the air is dry, lots of sweat because the atmosphere is hungry for all that moisture. It's taking it from us. More and more evaporation takes place. That cools our body because it takes the heat energy away from our skins. But if the air is humid, that evaporation slows down and our bodies can't cool as efficiently. So the wet bulb temperature, really important. And actually, I was looking earlier in the week at some of the modelling for the wet bulb temperature for today, Thursday, and how it differs from the UK to the rest of Europe. And it was showing a wet bulb temperature reading, or predicted wet bulb temperature of 25 Celsius for central England today.
Wow.
And that was higher than the vast majority of Europe, including places that were hotter, like northern France.
Yeah, okay.
Temperatures into the 40s,
yeah,
but with lower humidities. The coastal parts of Spain, their temperatures are around the mid-30s, but they're
similar to what we've seen.
Exactly, dew points are lower. So you had to go to Cyprus to get similar wet bulb temperatures, and it just shows that although the UK not seeing the highest absolute temperatures across Europe at the moment, we are experiencing some of the most uncomfortable heat. A lot of people talk about how British heat feels different, right? To the kind of heat that you experience on holiday. And of course, that's to do with the humidity often, also to do with our infrastructure, our buildings, how we're set up for this kind of weather.
And you're more relaxed on holiday as well. You haven't got to go to work.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. But yeah, you talk about the media get obsessed with the numbers, and that's fair enough. They want to know what the absolute peak is, they want to know what, and they report that. But again, just to go back to this heat wave, isn't just about the temperatures. It really isn't. It's the longevity, it's the fact that the nights are so warm as well. And although we're probably not going to beat that 40 degrees Celsius, although it's not completely out of the question, it's more likely to be 37, 38 for the next couple of days. But the humidity is higher, and that is likely to have bigger health impacts. The fact that it's going on for longer, and the fact that the nights are warmer also. We have broken records across Europe. Paris had a record, France had a record. I think we've seen records. Paris is in France, I do know that. Paris had a record.
40 Celsius in Paris yesterday, wasn't it? And 43 for France. Unbelievable temperatures for France any time of year.
And now that's moving north. So Netherlands had a record, I think, last night for overnight min, and we're expecting the heat now to push into Germany and across into Poland as well. So they're likely to peak at the weekend there with that heat moving through. Then hopefully it'll start to turn a little bit fresher.
There's a website called Meteo Alarm. You can see all the warnings in force across Europe, and the swathe of red for France, into Germany as well, and many other parts of Central Europe seeing red and orange or amber warnings. Spain also had high temperature warnings earlier in the week. So, we're not the only country that issues heat warnings. Yeah. Even places that are hot issue heat warnings when it goes above what they are used to. Every country has their own climatological expectations and their own infrastructure that deals with a certain range of temperatures. If you go beyond that, you get impacts, and that's.
But that's what we're seeing. That's what we're going to see with climate change. That's the whole point of climate change, isn't it? It just pushes the extremes. So when we get a hot spell, it just makes it that much more extremes and pushes it, or it's more likely to push into those boundaries where you can't cope, and that's why we issue the warnings. So we've got red. Put another red out today for Friday. So we've had the red warning out for Wednesday and Thursday. That's now been, there's a new one out for Friday. We've had an amber out for a couple of days for Friday and for Saturday. So, the warnings keep continuing, but the areas are getting smaller and shifting further east. But those warnings are still very serious. Obviously, red warnings we don't issue them lightly. We don't issue them often. But even in that amber warning area, it still means there is a real danger to health, particularly for the vulnerable. But people, reasonably healthy people, as we've discussed with the humidity, going outside, doing exercise, or working in those conditions, it can cause problems.
Yeah, and when we issue amber and red warnings for wind or from rain, and tragically lives are lost, it's very clear that a tree has fallen on a car, or someone has fallen off a cliff or whatever. It's very clear what's happened, and you can attribute that to the wind or the rain or whatever. Heat is a different thing, but we do know that hospital admissions really spike with this kind of weather. Whether you can directly attribute each illness to the heat, it's clear that there's a massive strain on hospitals whenever we get temperatures this far above average. And these heat wave warnings, they might not, it's a tricky one, because on the one hand, hot weather's fun for many people, right? And you go outside, it's beautiful, blue sky, don't get it often in this country. So on the one hand, it's lovely weather to go out and enjoy it, go to the beach. But then it gets above a certain threshold, typically the mid-30s, and it has such a big jump in impacts. It's a bit like when it snows in the winter. On the one hand, snow can be fun, right? People go abroad to go skiing and sledging and enjoy snow. Snow can be good fun if you're building snowmen in the garden and so on, but it causes massive traffic disruption, places shut down, a couple of centimetres of snow and the country grinds to a halt because we're not used to it. It's the same with the heat, right? On the one hand, lovely, we don't get that much warm sunshine in the UK. We want to enjoy it, but it gets to a certain point where it's less enjoyable.
And that's our job, isn't it? That's one of our tricky things about our job. The whole point of the Met Office is to help people stay safe and thrive. And that thrive thing, people enjoy the weather. People want to enjoy the weather when it's safe to do so. And we have to get the message across, whatever the weather, whatever is it doing. But that stay safe aspect, that's why we issue the warnings. That's what we've got, the key message that we've got to get across. And people accuse us of being over the top and scaremongering, that kind of stuff. It's just, we've just got to get the message across, and that's the reason why, because it does cause those health impacts. It does cause spikes. At the end of this, there'll be a wash up. People will look back, and the health experts will look at it and say, yes, there was X amount of excess deaths from this heat. And if our job is to help people prepare for it. We've been talking about it for over a week now, telling people there's a hot spell coming, so people can prepare, so that those can be mitigated. But there will still be impacts. And we saw in May another aspect of it, with people jumping into cold water. When it's hot, people think, I need to cool down. How can I do that? Go and jump in some cold water. And that's, that is really dangerous. Yes, it might cool you down, but it's going to cool you down really quickly. And that is, cold water shock is a very serious and very real phenomenon. And sadly, again, when we see hot spells of weather like this, you see spikes in fatalities from cold water shock. So we're not just saying it to be party poopers. We know people do like warm, sunny weather. People like hot, sunny weather. But this is pushing it. People can still enjoy it if they want to enjoy it safely, but it will cause problems. That's why we have to talk about it. That's why we have to warn about it.
I think actually a lot of people, looking at a lot of the comments we've had on our videos, a lot of people have got to the point where actually this isn't so enjoyable anymore.
It's not just summer.
And from my point of view, our house at home, blimey, I get home and it's hotter than it is outside. You get to the evening, it's unbearable, and with two young kids as well. Everyone's grumpy.
Everyone's tense. I'm exactly the same. But I guess it's slightly different for us from 2022, because actually down here it wasn't that. I mean, it was hot, but it wasn't. The heat was mostly further east, wasn't it? It was central and eastern England where so many stations broke the record. I think down here it was more like low 30s, wasn't it? And again, it wasn't anything like as humid. So these kind of temperatures we've been seeing down here, very unusual for here. So 33, 34 degrees in the Exeter area. So different parts are seeing different temperatures. And actually in eastern areas today, so we're recording this on Thursday, not as hot, actually slightly cooler in the eastern parts, the east coast, having some quite lovely sea fret and some mist, and temperatures only 21 degrees. So it is quite different, but then that heat is going to shift back east for Friday.
Well, they're going to notice that massive jump just as the winds switch from easterly to more of a southwesterly on Friday. Yeah,
and that's why we've got the red warning out for Friday across.
Exactly. What we've been doing on an evening is putting wet flannels in the freezer. It only takes 20 minutes for it to get really cold, and then you can just sit with it on your face for 5 minutes, and
it cools you down.
It's so nice. I took it one step further last night. I put a wet tea towel in the freezer, and then wrapped it around my shoulders. You go, ooh, it's really cold at first, so it's lovely, really nice.
Let us know in the comments what you do to stay cool. There's lots of really good advice on the Met Office website about how to stay cool. But I think I've heard in the last hot spell, people were talking about putting their pajamas in the freezer before going to bed. That's not recommended, because actually you're going to just end up with a wet bed, and also getting and having a cold shower is also not recommended just before you go to bed, because it wakes you up, because your body goes into shock again and it gets cold, and then your body will try and warm things up, and then you'll be even warmer when you go into bed. The best thing is to have a lukewarm shower before you go to bed, and then I always kind of dampen my wrists and my ears, the kind of extremities where there's more surface area, because that helps to radiate. So I put a little bit of get my hands wet, and then I just dab my ears and my ankles. So I go to bed with wet ankles and wet ears. There you go. There's an image.
I mean, you've got that amazing cold weather tip, haven't you, for wearing a swimming hat?
Yes.
When cycling.
Under my cycling cap.
Have you got an equivalent for cycling? You could put like an ice cap on your head.
Maybe that would work.
To work.
Maybe that would work. My wife's got one of those things you put over your head, like you put it in the freezer, a bit like. But I put it on the other day, and it was like nice for about 30 seconds, and then you just get like brain freeze, and it's really, and it's like, oh god, that was horrible. I'm not a big fan of those, but there's loads of good advice on the Met Office website. So check those out, and let us know in the comments if you've got any good tips for staying cold.
Last night, I was just dreaming of that moment. This weekend, we're going to feel it out. We're going to feel that fresh westerly breeze. Open all the doors and windows of the house and just let it in. That is going to be nice. I think that's going to be noticeable here from Saturday.
Yeah, one thing I'm conscious of talking about as well when we're doing the weather forecast is because the nights will get cooler gradually through the weekend, but rather than, again, look at the numbers, it could be down from 22 to 16 to 15, 16 over the weekend, but your house will take longer to cool down. So just because the temperature outside is that much lower, you might not actually notice it as much straight away, because houses retain heat. That's what they're built to do. So it may take a bit longer for your house to actually cool down that much. You might not notice it as quickly as the temperatures drop when you're sleeping.
Yeah, but we will be back to normal next week, won't we? It's going to be
your 10-day trend that you did yesterday. Well, it's huge numbers on the internet. People were desperate to know when it was going to do. Your thumbnail, what was it? Finally feeling fresher. And that's what's going to. So what is going to happen next week? Back to westerlies. Then people will be moaning about it being wet again, won't they?
Yeah, it doesn't look desperately wet, but it's more changeable, and we're back to that kind of northwest southeast gradient that you often get. So it's back to average summer weather, with jet stream picking up lows, sending them towards northwest Scotland. Northwest Scotland would be often quite breezy, maybe some stronger winds from time to time, and spells of rain and showers. And some of those outbreaks of rain will spill further south at times as well. And certainly gradually in the southeast, those temperatures are going to be returning closer to average, possibly still a degree or two above average. So we're talking about low to mid-20s in the southeast, high teens towards the north and northwest, and chopping and changing. The odd fine day, the odd more showery day, but nothing desperately unsettled. No sign of the heat returning either through next week. However, as we've seen, May, we had a very mixed first half of the month, then a heat wave. June, very mixed first half of the month, then a heat wave. Next week, back to mixed weather. You wouldn't, the way this is going, you wouldn't rule out another heat wave like this summer, would you?
One of the questions I keep getting asked when we're doing interviews, of which we've done a lot of this week, is does this mean we're going to see a crazy hot summer? Will there be more heat waves? I mean, you just can't specify, can't say yes or no to those questions. It doesn't necessarily lead on that because we've had a hot spell in June, we're then going to have a hot summer. Quite often we've had hot spells in June, and then the rest of the summer's been a bit rubbish, if you like, hot and sunny weather. But there's no necessary link. But obviously, if you've had now 2 hot spells, that is kind of priming the ground a little bit as well. So there's an increased chance of seeing hotter weather. But we've seen extremes. We broke the May record, we broke the June record, which is just incredible to think about that. Doesn't necessarily lead on that we're going to break the July record or the August record. You can't draw those kind of conclusions. But yeah, like you say, you wouldn't rule it out. Back to more typical conditions next week. We are expecting a hotter than average summer overall over the 3 months. That's the most likely scenario, but we often expect that because our climate has warmed, that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's going to be the case if we have an average July and average August, because it's been so hot. Yeah. So that's still going to be the case.
Another question we've been getting asked throughout the week: El Nino. Is this to do with El Nino? Which it isn't. El Nino has only just kind of been signed off. Yes, it's definitely happened. We are expecting that to lead on to global temperatures being higher than average for at least the next 6 months, probably into next year as well, because that's the main impact. In terms of what El Nino does for the UK weather specifically, very weak links between it and summer, and certainly wouldn't have had an impact on this summer yet, because it's only really just affected. There's a chance it could impact next summer, but it's a bigger impact with El Nino. It's what happens at the winter, and there's an increased chance because of an El Nino of the second half of winter in particular being colder, but that's just an increased chance. It doesn't necessarily mean it's guaranteed, and the start of autumn winter could be a little stormier. That's what we've seen, but the correlation is weak. It's far from straight.
It is, and talking about second half of winter being colder, it's all relative, isn't it? Because El Nino releases a lot of heat from the Pacific into the atmosphere, so global atmospheric temperatures are going to jump significantly in the next 12 months because of El Nino, on top of climate change that's already happened. So a colder second half of winter, well, that might be just, if it happens, relative to our modern climate rather than a kind of cold 1980s style winter.
Yeah, the snowmantics get very keen when we see El Nino, because they think that's going to mean loads of snow. If far from means that, so it just means definitely something to watch, and it'll be an interesting autumn and winter period for sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of the transition this week to colder or fresher conditions, that transition is going to be pushed along by thunderstorms. So we should probably talk about those a little bit, because we're going to see some pretty lively ones. Expecting some in the southwest of England this evening. There's a yellow warning in place at time of recording from 6 o'clock, but then broader thunderstorm warnings are in place. We could also see there's some rain coming into western Scotland. That's on a front, so it's a slightly different mechanism, but there we could also see some thunderstorms. But the ones in the southwest are really quite interesting in terms of, because they're being drawn up by the heat, or being kind of exacerbated by the heat. We could see some really strong downdrafts with those, which will do a couple of things. Could spike the temperatures, so we could see big temperature spikes as they draw down really warm air really rapidly, so heat bursts, which we don't see very often. And also, of course, some very strong gusts, unusually strong gusts of wind. We often get gusts of wind with thunderstorms, but these could be next level and cause some very strong winds.
60 mile per hour gusts, or even higher in places, with frequent lightning as well, and hail. These storms, we saw a similar setup earlier in the week, didn't we, of a supercell, boom, exploding across the south of the UK, 29,000 lightning strikes, and serious impacts from that, flooding as well. So I don't want to suggest that we're going to see an identical thing happening on Thursday night, because thunderstorms are so tricky to predict. Very tiny variations in the atmosphere can have a cascading impact on how these thunderstorms develop and where and when they happen. But the energy is primed at the moment for some really serious thunderstorms developing. The heat and humidity, the sheer energy that's present close to the surface, you just need a bit of extra lift in the atmosphere, we say. So low pressure is starting to move in from the southwest, and that's going to allow that heat and humidity at the surface to be forced up and develop these storms. And so, certainly something we'll be watching Thursday night, and then further showers and thunderstorms potentially over the next few days as low pressure gets more influential across the UK.
Yeah, that's the way we often. We don't, not always. We've seen some heat waves recently actually end without a bang, but many times in the summer they do end with a bit of a bang, and we are likely to see that. Different parts again, we'll see the thundery showers at different times, and you say the air is going to rush up rapidly, but then also potentially come down. It was interesting what the chief was saying, or interesting that he was picking up that the models were picking up on those downdrafts and the heat bursts, and actually there was there was spikes in the temperatures across the channel generated by the model, and that's indicative of our higher resolution model, a better modelling of these kind of things. It's really quite remarkable to see. I've never seen a heat burst modelled before. We've seen a very rare occasion of it actually observed. You can see temperature spiking, but actually being predicted by the models is really quite remarkable.
And one thing that the models can struggle with, because thunderstorms are so small but have a big effect, one thing that the models struggle with, if the thunderstorms happen in a slightly different location, because once they happen they take on a life of their own, then that can have an impact on the next day's temperatures. We saw that earlier in the week. A lot of rain across the south of the UK, and then temperatures on Tuesday were slower to climb than the models were suggesting the day before, because the models didn't have so much rain in the south of the UK. So we had a slower temperature rise on Tuesday morning. And that we're watching the thunderstorms tonight for whether they're going to push into those hotter parts of the east of England for early Friday and dump a lot of rain. That would slow down the temperature rise. You wouldn't have such high temperatures. Legacy of cloud and all that stuff as well would impact the temperature rise. So that's another thing.
But then that would increase the humidity.
Yes.
Which makes it more uncomfortable.
You're trading one thing for another. Temperatures might not be as impressive for people to talk about.
That word,
but with higher humidities, it would feel just as bad.
And it felt really sticky Tuesday morning after those thunderstorms. That was really quite oppressive. So it'd be interesting to watch those thunderstorms. And a lot of people get very excited that the Met heads who we love, who are really keen on weather, and we see a lot of that on social media. People, I'm gutted I missed that thunderstorm, but there will be some big ones Thursday night, but then again into the weekend as we see that the final kind of push of the cooler air, the jet stream finally pushing in low pressure and back to, like you say, more changeable, more typical summer weather.
Looking forward to that.
I think a lot of people are looking forward to it. Based on your 10-day train yesterday, a lot of people are looking forward to it. Right, have we got anything else to discuss? Or have we covered everything there?
I think we'd probably better get on with some other work.
We probably better have, yes. We probably have. We've probably got some more interviews to do or something like that. Big requests coming in from the press office. Let us know if you've enjoyed this kind of chat. We might do more of them in the future. It's been good fun, hasn't it? So not just maybe when the severe weather, any type of weather we can go through. So do let us know in the comments if you enjoy this kind of chat. If you've got any kind of questions, we'll read them. We're doing the live tomorrow. Who's on the live tomorrow?
Annie and me.
It's you and Annie tomorrow on the live. So on Friday's Weather Studio Live. So again, drop comments in here. We'll read them, maybe answer some of them during that, but tune in to the live tomorrow because there's lots to talk about in that. I guess you'll go over what's happened this week. Is there a quiz? Do you know are you doing the quiz?
I'm doing the quiz. I haven't thought about it yet, but
okay.
We'll see. I don't know who's in the lead at the moment on the quiz board.
Well, it's Alex Burke. It's been taken down, for out of taste. Alex Burke is in the lead on the quiz, but he's played more than everyone else.
Of course. Yeah. So when you look at averages, I'm still last.
I think it's level. I think you and Annie are bang average 3, both averaging 3.
Okay.
Not that I'm obsessed with it or anything.
Still plenty of time.
But yes, lots of time. Indefinite time. Okay, right, we will wrap this up. Thank you very much for listening. As I said, do let us know in the comments if you've enjoyed it. If you'd like us to discuss other things, we might do it with other people. We could get the Chiefs in one day maybe to talk about that kind of stuff. And I think it's quite an interesting way to have a little bit of a chat. So let us know in the comments. But any other questions, as always, do follow us across social media. Hit the like button if you could do that. Hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not following us already, then do so. But yes, let's go on and do some more work.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.